2022 has simultaneously felt like one of the longest years of my life and one of the quickest. There's been so much that has happened this year that when I think back to the beginning of the year, that feels like such a long time ago. And yet I also feel like the time has passed so quickly. And in that time, I have succeeded on a lot of things in my writing and as an author, and of course in life in general, but I've also failed at a few things. And today I just wanted to make a little bit of a chatty video about some of my successes, some of my failures, and how I'm sort of reflecting on those things going into the new year. For those of you who are new here, my name's Sam. I'm a romance author based in the UK. And for those of you who are sadists and are just here to see my failures, you can skip ahead to the timestamp I'm going to put up on the screen right now. I see you, it's fine. But first, let's take a look at where I was at the start of the year. First of all, I was working in a job that I did not enjoy. I had quite a high up position in my job, but it was really a toxic work culture, and I don't use that term lightly. I didn't even realize some of the ways in which I was like protecting myself and coping at that job until I moved on from it. One of the things that had fallen by the wayside as a result of that was my writing. I had worked really hard to build up my writing habit, but then because of this job, I was working all hours of the day, every single day. I had to give up a lot of things in my life in order to make that job work and to feel like I was doing a good job, and it still wasn't enough. So the first success that I would like to celebrate is the fact that I finished my second book while I was still at that job. When the new year came around, I said to myself, I've been working on this book for so long, and yes, life has thrown a lot of curveballs at me over the last couple of years, but this is the time that I'm going to finish it. It's something that's important to me. It's a core part of who I am, and I'm done letting this job that is frankly quite thankless keep me from a thing that I love and makes me feel more like myself. So I recommitted to my writing, and I ended up getting my second book done, and I finished that in the spring, and that's now coming out in March of 2023. That was a huge success for me, and I'm really excited to celebrate that with friends and family. I'm going to be going home to the US shortly after publication. I've got some nice things planned here as well, and it was just a really amazing thing to be able to accomplish despite a lot of other things going on in my life. I also realized through that process, one, how important writing was to my life. A lot of the things that I was experiencing mental health wise, I found just changed when I started writing again. It just was that foundational to my mental health and to my feeling of fulfillment that the second that I started doing it again and the second it was a part of my life again, I started to feel more like myself. My relationships got better. My communication got better, every aspect of my life improved. And so I committed to making writing as close to a daily habit as possible. I also realized that that wasn't going to be possible at the job that I was at. So I left my job and went to another one where my work-life balance is much, much better, and I am able to write every single day. So that's the second success, is making writing a daily habit. And honestly, I think that's the most important one, which then of course brought about my next success, which is that I finished the first draft of the next book after that. And I wrote it really quickly. I wrote it in 2 months. And yes, there are issues with it. Yes, I'm having to rewrite a large portion of it because I changed point of view and tense about 2/3 of the way through. Whoops. But it's a good story, and it's one that I'd had in my head for a really long time. It's one my publisher wants to see from me, and it's one I'm really proud of and I'm excited to share with you. I then also wrote about 2/3 of the next one because that was the first in a trilogy, and I wrote about 2/3 of the next one as part of NaNoWriMo. So in 6 months of making writing a daily habit, I've written a book and 2/3, which is pretty good. And the last success I want to talk about is actually about the way that I quantify whether my writing is successful or not. And that is that I stopped setting word count goals for myself. I used to think when I was writing, oh, I'm gonna hit 5K this weekend, or oh, I really wanna hit 2,000 words today, or oh, I'm going away on this writing retreat, I wanna do 10,000 words while I'm away. And I found that this created a really unhealthy dynamic for me, and this may not be true for everyone, but it meant that I would like write in a really quick spurt, get a lot done, be like, oh, I write really quickly. And then I'd procrastinate doing the rest because I knew that if I just worked in a frenzy, I would hit the word count. So by setting time commitment goals for myself, as in I want to commit at least an hour a day to my writing, it's meant that I've actually created a higher output and definitely a better output as well. Some days that's like 500 words. Some days I get closer to 2,000 words because I go over on my time. That's fine, but it's that minimum time commitment that's important. And that's what helps to maintain that daily habit. If I'd said to myself, I want to write 1,000 words a day, then some days I might do that in 45 minutes, and some days I might sit at my computer for ages and not hit that. And those days where it took me longer to get to that word count would feel less productive, despite the fact that I'd had a higher time investment, and therefore they'd be discouraging and they'd be more likely to knock me off my habit. Whereas if your whole goal is how long you are sat in the seat looking at your document and working on your document, you really can't fail at that, and it makes it a lot easier to maintain that habit. So I think that's a success that I'm really proud of, is sort of changing the way that I think about that, and hopefully it's a good tip for you as well. So now let's talk about my failures, and it is good to see you back, those of you who skipped ahead. I have got 3 things this year that I would consider writing related failures. The first one, like, kind of only half counts. I am still not convinced that I won NaNoWriMo. Everyone I speak to is like, yes, you absolutely did. You wrote all the words, but I didn't feel like I did. I felt like it was a little bit of a mess by the end, and I feel like I've not left it in a place where I'm super excited to pick it back up. And that might change once I finish my book 1 rewrite. I might find that book 2 is looking more compelling, but I think I worked so hard to make them feel like individual stories that actually it feels quite self-contained, and I'm a little worried about what's gonna happen early next year when I finish my book 1 rewrite and it's time for me to address that one again. Because I think I just burnt myself out on it and I didn't leave it in a very good place. And I don't like to do that to myself. So for me, that's kind of a failure. The second thing that I've failed at is I have not found new beta readers for my books. I know I mentioned in the mistakes video that I made about needing to have the right beta readers and how I had the wrong beta readers for my first 2 books, and I really wanted to correct that mistake this year so that I have beta readers lined up for when I do finish Project Gilbert book 1, but I haven't corrected that mistake, and I think part of that is because I haven't finished the rewrite. And once I have a draft ready, then maybe I'll start looking for beta readers, but really by then I'm going to want to already have them, so I should have started looking already. I did join a writing group, so I've really got no excuse, but it's easier said than done. It's quite a vulnerable thing to put your work out there, so I need to do a little bit of thinking about that in the new year, especially as I am closing the gap on this Project Gilbert book 1 rewrite. And the last failure was definitely having gone the first few months of the year without doing any writing. It wasn't until like February that I started working on my second book, Summer Wedding in Santorini, again. I hadn't picked it up for months at that point. And whilst I have since really corrected this mistake, it still really sits with me that I sort of let it go that long without doing something about it. And I think it kind of felt like revolutionary to me when I realized how much writing had impacted things. Like if you had asked me what changes I needed to make to improve my mental health, I would have said like better work-life balance, maybe a bit more exercise, more quality time with loved ones. Like I wouldn't have said like the lack of writing was drastically impacting my mental health in a negative way, but it was. And I'm really a little bit cross with myself that I didn't recognize that sooner. And I'm trying not to be so cross with myself because obviously, you know, I've ended up in a good place with it. But I still feel really annoyed with myself that I let it go that long, especially given how near instant the transformation was when I started working on it again and I started feeling creatively fulfilled. So how can you learn from my mistakes? Find good beta readers. Don't burn yourself out on your projects and make sure you leave them in a place where you're excited to pick them back up. And if your mental health is suffering, it may be that your creative practice is non-existent or is dwindling, and that's what needs stoking. It wouldn't have been the first place that I looked, but maybe it should be the first place that you look. I mean, definitely the first place you look should be therapy. Therapy is great. But like, if you're looking for practical things to try, maybe a creative practice is helpful. So I hope you found that insightful. It's been quite the year and I've got a lot of exciting things coming up in 2023, a lot of ambitions for the year. We'll see which of those will end up being successes and which will be failures in next year's version of this video. But don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to see what I've got coming your way in terms of my goals for next year. And I will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.